I had always prided myself on being a devoted mother. From the day my son was born, I poured everything I had into raising him, late nights comforting him when he cried, early mornings preparing his favorite breakfasts, and endless sacrifices I never regretted. I thought he knew how much I loved him, how much I had always done for him. But over the past few months, something had changed. My son, who had once been warm and affectionate, started withdrawing from me. He spent more time in his room, hardly spoke, and when he did, his words were sharp, cold, and cutting. I tried to talk to him, asking if anything was wrong, but he would shrug me off or mutter something dismissive. I felt a growing distance I didn't know how to bridge. The final straw came one evening. I had been tidying up the living room, humming quietly to myself, when he walked in from school. He threw his backpack on the floor and, without even looking at me, said, "I'm tired of seeing you, Mom." It hit me like a punch to the chest. I froze, unable to comprehend what I had just heard. What did you just say?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't respond. His expression was blank, his eyes distant. He muttered something about needing space and retreated to his room, slamming the door behind him. I sat there in the quiet house, my heart aching. I replayed his words over and over, trying to make sense of them. Had I done something wrong? Was he really that unhappy with me? The thought that my own child could feel this way about me felt unbearable. I cried that night, alone in the kitchen, the moonlight casting long shadows across the floor. I began to notice the small ways he had been shutting me out, ignoring my texts, avoiding family dinners, and spending hours locked away on his phone. It wasn't just a phase, it was a complete withdrawal. And as a mother, I felt powerless. I wanted to scream, to beg him to understand how much I loved him, but I also realized something deep inside me. I couldn't continue living in a house where I was made to feel unwelcome, unloved, and invisible. It was then that the idea began to take root, a wild, impulsive thought, but one that felt strangely liberating. If he no longer wanted me in his life, why should I continue to live under the same roof, bending over backward for someone who didn't appreciate me? My heart was heavy, but my mind was strangely clear. Maybe it was time to take control of my life and to send a message he would never forget. Little did I know that decision would set off a chain of events that would shock my family, my neighbors, and even my son himself. It would change our lives forever. The next few days were some of the hardest of my life. I kept replaying my son's words in my mind. "I'm tired of seeing you, Mom." Every time I tried to make small talk, offer a smile, or cook a meal, I was met with indifference or irritation. I began to feel invisible in the very home I had built with love. My heart was heavy, but strangely, a part of me felt awakened. I started thinking about the house itself, the walls filled with memories of birthdays, late-night talks, and family celebrations. Each room reminded me of my sacrifices, my sleepless nights, and my relentless efforts to give him a good life. And yet, despite everything, he no longer seemed to value it, or me. I began to research quietly. I called a real estate agent, just to understand the process of selling. At first, it felt surreal. Selling the home where my son had grown up? Was I really capable of doing something so bold? I knew it would shock him, anger him, maybe even make him regret his words, but I also knew it might be the only way to reclaim a sense of control in my life. I talked to a few close friends, people I trusted, to see if I was being impulsive. Their reactions were mixed. Some begged me to reconsider, to find another way, but others whispered quietly, "Sometimes people only realize your value when it's gone." That phrase stuck with me. I realized that no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace and happiness for someone who treated me with such coldness. Every night I would lie awake thinking about the consequences. Would he hate me forever? Would our relationship ever recover? I tried to picture life after selling the house, and though it terrified me, it also gave me a strange sense of freedom. Freedom from the constant rejection, the snide remarks, and the emptiness I felt in a place that should have been full of love. Finally, after days of soul-searching, I made up my mind. I would sell the house. I would do it quietly, without telling him in advance. He had made it clear how he felt.
If he truly wanted to push me away, I would let him feel the weight of his words. I wouldn't act out of spite. I would act out of self-respect. The day I signed the papers, I felt a mixture of fear, sadness, and exhilaration. It was a turning point, the moment I decided that my life and my dignity mattered just as much as anyone else's. I left the office with a trembling hand and a racing heart, realizing that nothing would ever be the same again. I knew the moment I told him his reaction would be explosive, but I also knew that some lessons in life can only be learned the hard way. Sometimes people only realize your value when it's gone. So, what happened next? Well, you'll be shocked to find out the ending. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that will shock you and touch your heart.
The house felt smaller than ever that morning. I moved through the rooms quietly, pretending everything was normal, though my heart was pounding. Every corner reminded me of the countless memories we had shared, the laughter, the arguments, the late-night talks. And yet, all of it felt like it belonged to someone else now, someone who didn't appreciate it, someone who had chosen to push me away. I waited until my son came home from school. His face was as blank and distant as ever. He didn't notice the nervous energy in the air or the way I kept glancing at the clock. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and asked him to sit down. He reluctantly obeyed, crossing his arms like a teenager preparing for a lecture he didn't want to hear. "I need to tell you something important," I said, my voice trembling but firm. He didn't respond, just stared at me with those eyes I barely recognize anymore. I sold the house," I said finally, the words breaking out of me like a dam bursting. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. His eyes widened, disbelief written all over his face. You what?" he stammered, his voice shaking slightly. I could see the anger and shock rising behind his eyes. "I sold it," I repeated, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. "I tried to make this work. I tried to be the mother you needed. But your words, they hurt me. You told me you were tired of seeing me, and I realized I couldn't keep living in a place where I wasn't wanted." He stood up abruptly, pacing the living room, muttering things I could barely catch. "You can't do that! That's my home! You can't!" His voice cracked with a mix of anger, fear, and confusion. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something else. Regret? Shock? Maybe even a tiny seed of understanding. I stayed calm, letting him vent. I didn't yell at him. I didn't beg him to understand. I simply explained my side, my pain, and my reasons. "I love you," I said softly, "but I also have to love myself. I can't live somewhere I'm made to feel unwelcome." He stopped pacing and sank into the couch, burying his face in his hands. I could feel the tension in the room like a storm about to break. It was painful to see him like this, but I also knew something crucial had shifted. The boy who had rejected me was now facing the consequences of his words. He couldn't ignore reality anymore. The rest of the evening was silent, except for the occasional sigh or muttered apology. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't revenge. It was a wake-up call, a lesson in respect, boundaries, and the fact that love alone cannot sustain someone who refuses to value it. That night, I lay in my room, exhausted, anxious, and yet oddly free. For the first time in months, I felt like I had taken control of my own life. The storm had begun, but the sun was slowly starting to peek through the clouds. The next morning, I woke up with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. I wasn't sure if my son would lash out, leave without a word, or finally start to understand what he had done. The house felt unusually quiet as I moved through the rooms, avoiding his bedroom door, trying to give him space to process the news. It wasn't long before he emerged, his expression unreadable. I braced myself, expecting anger, shouting, or tears. But instead, he was strangely quiet, almost reflective. He didn't greet me,
didn't acknowledge me with his usual indifference. I could see his hands fidgeting, his eyes avoiding mine, and it hit me. He was trying to process what had just happened. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "Mom, I didn't think you'd actually do it." There was a mix of shock and disbelief in his tone. I thought you'd just stay here no matter what I said." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "I stayed for years, even when your words hurt me. But there comes a point when love isn't enough if respect and appreciation are missing. I needed to do this for myself." He slumped into a chair, staring at the floor. For the first time, I could see the weight of his own actions pressing down on him. He realized that his harsh words had consequences, and that his mother wasn't an endless source of forgiveness or tolerance. A strange tension filled the air. Anger, fear, regret, and maybe even a hint of understanding, all tangled together. Over the next few days, things were tense. He was quieter than usual, retreating to his room more often, but the atmosphere in the house had changed. It wasn't the cold indifference I had lived with before. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that something fundamental had shifted. I noticed small things. He helped with chores without being asked. He started conversations again, and there were fleeting moments when I caught him staring, almost as if he were considering his own behavior. It wasn't an instant transformation, but it was progress, a sign that he was beginning to see me not just as a mother, but as a person who deserved respect and consideration. I realized that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that hurt the most. The house had been more than bricks and walls. It was a symbol of love, sacrifice, and shared life. By taking a step back, I forced him to see the value of what he had taken for granted. It wasn't punishment, it was clarity. That week, I also started making small plans for myself. A few trips I had postponed, some hobbies I had neglected, and quiet moments just for me. The sense of freedom was intoxicating, but it also came with responsibility. I had shown him consequences, but now I had to rebuild our connection carefully, with boundaries and patience. Curious how our relationship started to change after this shocking event? Watch to see the unexpected twist that brought us closer and left everyone stunned. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life emotional stories that will shock and inspire you. After the shock of the house sale began to settle, a strange calm came over the home. My son was quieter, thoughtful, and I could sense a change in his demeanor, though it was subtle. He no longer dismissed me with a shrug or walked past me as if I didn't exist. Instead, he seemed cautious, as if testing the boundaries of this new reality. One evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea, when he approached me. His expression was hesitant, almost vulnerable. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked. My heart pounded. Could this be the conversation that would mend the years of distance between us, or would it spiral into another argument? I nodded, trying to appear calm. Of course. He sat down, fidgeting with his hands, avoiding eye contact. He said that he didn't realize how much he hurt me with what he said. He was frustrated. He didn't mean it, but seeing you go through all this, losing the house, it made me understand something. I've taken a lot for granted. I listened quietly, letting him speak. His words felt like a mix of apology, confession, and recognition. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. For years, I had tried to force understanding through endless patience, but this was him realizing the impact of his own behavior. That recognition carried a weight that words alone couldn't convey. He paused, then added, "I know you didn't do this to hurt me. I get it now. I was wrong." His eyes finally met mine, and I could see genuine remorse. It was an emotional moment, one I hadn't expected to happen so soon. A sense of relief washed over me, But I also knew that rebuilding trust would take time. In the days that followed, small changes began to show. He started helping with meals, asking questions about my day, and even sharing little things from his life that he hadn't spoken about in months. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, but the distance between us had begun to shrink. Meanwhile, I focused on myself as well. I started taking evening walks alone, revisited hobbies I had neglected, and allowed myself moments of peace without guilt. The house, now sold, had symbolized more than just walls. It represented a turning point, a lesson in boundaries, self-respect, and the importance of being valued. I realized that sometimes the hardest choices bring the most unexpected growth. My son was beginning to understand the consequences of his words, and I was learning that standing up for myself didn't make me a bad mother. It made me human. That night, as I closed the door to my new apartment, I looked around at my small, cozy space and smiled. It wasn't the house I had raised him in, but it was mine. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom, clarity, and hope. A few weeks after moving into my new place, life had begun to feel surprisingly lighter. The weight of constant tension and silent resentment was gone. My son and I were still in the early stages of reconnecting, but there was hope. Small gestures, shared meals, and quiet conversations that hinted at the possibility of a better relationship. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened that changed everything. My son arrived at my door, hesitating in the hallway. He looked nervous, almost ashamed. "Mom, can I come in?" he asked. I nodded, curious but cautious. Once inside, he didn't sit down immediately. Instead, he fidgeted, pacing the room, trying to find the right words. Finally, he stopped and looked me in the eyes. "Mom, I need to tell you something important. I didn't just say what I said out of frustration. There's something I've been keeping from you, something I should have told you a long time ago." My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea what to expect. He took a deep breath and continued. "The truth is, I was struggling. School, friends, everything felt overwhelming. I felt like I was failing, and I didn't know how to handle it. I projected all my anger and frustration onto you. I thought if I pushed you away, I could control something in my life. I know now that it was wrong, and I regret it." Hearing him say this, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions: pain, relief, and a deep sadness that my son had felt so alone while I had been trying to protect and support him. I reached out and held his hand, squeezing gently. "Thank you for telling me. I know it wasn't easy," I said softly. He lowered his gaze. "I also want to apologize for how I treated you, for saying I was tired of seeing you and for making you feel unwelcome. You've always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it." For the first time in months, I felt tears welling up, not of anger or frustration, but of relief and love. My son, despite all the pain he had caused, was finally being honest. The walls we had built around each other were slowly coming down, brick by brick. That night, we talked for hours. He shared more about the struggles he had been hiding, the pressure he felt, and how lost he had been. I listened, offering guidance, empathy, and a gentle reminder that he was never alone. And in that conversation, something shifted, an unspoken understanding that our relationship could be rebuilt, stronger than before, but only if we both respected each other's feelings. I realized that sometimes the most shocking revelations come wrapped in honesty and vulnerability. My son's words were painful, but they were also a key to healing. The house I had sold wasn't just a physical structure. It had been a symbol of lessons learned, boundaries set, and the importance of being valued. Want to know how this revelation led to a powerful moment that changed our bond forever? Don't miss it. It's a twist that will leave you speechless. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more emotional, real-life stories that will shock and inspire you. The days following my son's revelation were quiet but different. There was an unspoken tension in the air.
Not the kind that suffocates, but one that signals change. I noticed small gestures I had longed for. He would make an effort to help around the apartment, ask me about my day, or just sit beside me quietly, as if testing the waters of a relationship we had both neglected. Then, one evening, something happened that completely shifted the dynamic between us. I had just finished preparing dinner when I heard the door click open. My son stepped inside, holding a small, worn notebook in his hands. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long while. Vulnerability mixed with determination. "Mom, I want you to see this," he said softly, handing me the notebook. I opened it hesitantly, unsure what to expect. Inside were pages filled with thoughts he had been writing over months. Journals, sketches, reflections, and confessions. Each page revealed the struggles he had kept hidden, the fears he had bottled up, and the overwhelming guilt he felt for pushing me away. I felt a lump in my throat. Every word he had written was raw, honest, and heartbreaking. It painted a picture of a boy who felt lost in a world that demanded too much from him. A boy who had lashed out at the one person who had always loved him unconditionally. He took a deep breath. "And I want you to understand. I know I hurt you, Mom, and I'm sorry. I've been so angry and frustrated with life, and I let it spill over onto you. I never meant to make you feel unwanted, but I did, and I hate myself for it." I didn't say a word at first. I simply embraced him, holding him close as he let out a shuddering sigh. The tension, the anger, the resentment that had built up over months seemed to dissolve in that single moment. It wasn't just forgiveness. It was understanding, empathy, and the beginning of real healing. For the first time in years, I felt our bond strengthen. It wasn't instant, and it wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. That night, we stayed up talking about everything, our fears, regrets, dreams, and hopes for the future. I realized that letting go of the house had been more than a physical act. It had been a lesson in self-worth, boundaries, and the importance of being respected. My son finally understood the impact of his words, and I understood the power of tough love. That moment, with the notebook and our heartfelt conversation, became a turning point. It wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about growth, honesty, and rebuilding trust that had long been neglected. The days after that emotional night felt like a new chapter in our lives. The tension and distance that had once defined our home were replaced with cautious optimism, laughter, and small moments of genuine connection. My son and I were learning to communicate again, slowly, carefully, but sincerely. He started taking responsibility for his actions, not only apologizing, but actively showing that he valued our relationship. He helped around the apartment, asked about my day without being prompted, and even shared pieces of his own struggles. It wasn't perfect, and there were moments when old habits tried to creep back, but the foundation of respect and understanding had been firmly laid. One afternoon, as we were sitting together drinking tea, he said something that caught me off guard. "Mom, I know I can't take back the things I said or how I treated you, but I want you to know I see you now. I see everything you've done for me, and I'm grateful. I don't want to ever take that for granted again." Hearing that, I felt an overwhelming mix of relief, pride, and love. All the pain, frustration, and heartbreak we had endured over the months had led to this moment, a moment of true understanding between us. I realized that sometimes people need to hit rock bottom to recognize the value of what they have, and sometimes tough love is the only way to teach that lesson. The apartment, the change of environment, and the bold decision to sell the house had been more than just practical steps. They were symbolic acts that showed both of us the importance of respect, boundaries, and the consequences of words. It wasn't about punishment. It was about learning, growth, and reclaiming dignity. In the weeks that followed, our bond grew stronger. We started planning small outings together, sharing meals without tension, and even laughing at silly memories from the past. The house we had left behind no longer felt like a loss. It had served its purpose. It had been the catalyst for change, the wake-up call that neither of us could ignore. Looking back, I understand that love alone is not enough. Respect, communication, and understanding are equally essential. And while the journey had been painful, it ultimately brought us closer than ever before. My son had learned the weight of his words, and I had learned the power of standing up for myself without losing my love for him. Now, as I reflect on everything that happened, I feel a profound sense of closure and hope. We weren't perfect, but we were rebuilding, stronger and wiser. The house may be gone, but our renewed relationship is something that can never be taken away. If you've ever faced heartbreak, family struggles, or tough decisions, remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the strongest bonds. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories full of emotion, lessons, and unforgettable twists.